उमज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पंचकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी नामिने कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानंद माधवं श्री चैतन्य। हरि ओम तत्सत। हरे कृष्ण। So welcome back. So we are continuing our discussion on the conclusive chapter, chapter 18, conclusion, the perfection of renunciation. Before I start, just a quick reminder that we have Ekadashi Tithi tomorrow, just in case I forget to mention. It's already posted on the group. Just a quick mention. Ekadashi tomorrow, I think both in India as well as in Malaysia. Breakfast times, please check in the WhatsApp group. Sunday, we will be having Narsingh Chaturdashi, so you can attend in your respective localities, the respective ISKCON temples. Saturday, we'll discuss. Actually, quite likely on Friday, I've been also asked by the local ISKCON temple to give a class on Narsingha pastimes on Zoom on Friday. So I was just thinking that we could actually, if you are all okay, do the class on Friday itself. You all can also join there if that's okay with you. But we can discuss that towards the end of the session, because instead of Saturday, we can do on Friday, and it will be on the topic of Lord Narsingha's pastimes as well. This will be something similar to the class we had on Ram Leela for the Ram Navami. It will be something similar like that, a slide deck. So then in that case, we can do a class on Friday, and then we will skip the Saturday class, and then Sunday you can attend temple. Let me know your thoughts later towards the end of the class. I'm okay if you want to do also on Saturday, not a problem for me. Okay, so getting back to where we are in the discussion, Krishna is helping Arjuna summarily understand about how activities are binding based on the motivation rather than their performance or not performance. This is the key concept in the Gita. And Krishna explaining to Arjuna that the key concept that we need to understand with respect to bondage and liberation is the concept of the three modes. And increasingly from bondage towards liberation, one starts with, at the lowest level, the mode of ignorance. Then slightly higher is the mode of passion. The mode conducive to liberation is the mode of goodness. And from the mode of goodness, one transcends the mode of goodness and goes to pure goodness or unalloyed goodness, where one gives up all desires to enjoy matter and dedicates oneself fully to the Supreme Personality of God. So when Krishna mentions about the inescapability of the three modes for practically all living entities, and he explains how the bodies of everybody are in the three modes, Krishna continues to explain that concept. Verse 40, Krishna says, there is no being either here or among the devatas, the higher planets, who's freed from the three modes of matter. And in the last class, in the last week, I have already given you a hint into what Krishna is going to be discussing the subsequent verses. We briefly have already discussed that. So today we'll be going into the same thing in a bit more detail. But the essential concept that we discussed is about how it is not about abruptly trying to switch modes by switching our activity uh, or duties rather. Yeah? But it is about engaging our acquired nature in the Lord's service in a detached way. So dutiful, detached work done for the pleasure of the Lord is the secret to perfection. So Krishna is building this story, and in the next few verses, Krishna explains, using the same concept of the modes, how the four classifications, the four varnas, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, are also categorized based on their qualities, based on the modes of material nature. And he explains what are their essential natures, because that's also important for us to understand. And why it is important to understand. So once we understand what are the values or qualities by which each of these four varnas live, then we can also understand that, oh, that if these are the qualities that you are living by, then that is the bucket that you fall into. And your duties also become deduced accordingly. Because your duties are based on your values and qualities. So we will discuss over the next 4 or 5 verses what that is. So in text 41, Krishna says to Arjuna that 4 varnas, the Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Shudras, are distinguished by their qualities. And these qualities are born of their own nature. And they are comprised of the 3 modes. So first, Krishna starts explaining what are the qualities by which the Brahmanas work. So now we should understand that the qualities, which are also like values, they guide the activities, they drive the activities. Because if you have a certain kind of a quality or value, automatically your activities will be driven by that. So Krishna explains the nature or the natural qualities by which Brahmanas work. So he lists them as follows. He says peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. So what does this mean? This is what a Brahmana values in life. What does it mean? He lives by these qualities. This is what he values. You'll not see here that he values how successful he became in the job, how much money he made, how much he is glorified in the world. A Brahmana doesn't value that. What does he value? He values being peaceful. Brahmana is about peaceful. He doesn't like to be disturbed. And he manages that peacefulness through self-control. Because he understands that peace comes by control of the mind and senses. And he performs the necessary austerities to help him have that kind of a purity of consciousness and to increase his tolerance for the various dualities of life. Tolerance is also very important. Because whether one is a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, all the Varnas will be exposed to various challenges. In fact, Brahmana has more unpredictability in his life as compared to the Shudra, Vaishya and Kshatriya from a material perspective. Why? Because a Brahmana is not supposed to take a salary. I mean, at least in the traditional sense. Yeah. If a traditional Brahmana never takes a salary, which means he cannot be employed under another person. It's just dependent on whatever comes to him. So when he performs certain ceremonies, somebody gives him a dakshina, he accepts that and uses it for his living. And that's how he maintains himself. Based on whatever others give. And if he's really in need and he doesn't have enough, then he actually can even go and request for charity from the other varnas. So he can ask for bhiksha. And it is a great blessing for the other varnas to give dan to the Brahman. So that is why in society in those days there was a culture that whenever there are wonderful occasions and happy occasions, they give charity to the Brahmanas and to the needy. And Brahmanas were generally needy because Brahmanas never endeavored for economic development. So generally Brahmanas are poor because they never endeavored too much. So if you look at their qualities, they are very honest. So they are not politicians. They are not traders. Whatever is the truth, they speak truth. Of course, truth with the intent of benefiting others. Sometimes some people may speak a harsh truth. A harsh truth meant towards hurting others is not useful. So Krishna has already said austerity of speech means saying truthful things which are beneficial and which are pleasing. That is sattvic speech. And knowledge, wisdom and religiousness. Religiousness means they are very expert in following the proper religious observances and rituals. And they are very learned in scripture and they are also very wise. They're not just theoretical in their understanding, they have a deep understanding. So these are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. And because these are the qualities which guide their life, they are very trustworthy and reliable. And that is why everybody goes to the Brahmana for advice. Why they go for advice? First, they are knowledgeable and wise. And not only are they knowledgeable and wise, but they are also not interested in material things. So people know that, oh, there's nothing that he wants to gain from me, so there's no reason why he will lie. He's not political. So at least in olden times, a person would very easily trust a Brahmana because they knew a Brahmana is detached and is selfless. And that is why those Brahmanas who truly displayed these qualities, the scripture says, Brahma janati iti Brahmana. He who is well versed in spiritual science is a Brahman. Not just because we are born in a so-called Brahmana family, we become a Brahman, but he who is well versed in the spiritual science is Brahman. Brahma janati iti Brahman. He who knows the science of the supreme truth, Brahma, is a Brahman. And Vaishnava is one step up. Why? Because a Vaishnava not only knows the science of the Supreme Truth, but he is in love with the Supreme Truth and dedicated his life to the Supreme Truth. So a Brahmana, when he graduates further, he becomes a Vaishnava or a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, Brahmanas are also devotees, in the sense that they accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But a Vaishnava is one who actively loves and serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the highest is a Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is transcendental. He's not even in the mode of goodness. He's in the mode of pure goodness. So Brahmanas as a Varna correspond to the mode of goodness. Kshatriyas, which is the next category, corresponds to the mode of mixture of passion and goodness. So they are a mixture. The other three modes are generally mixtures. So the other three varnas are generally mixture. Brahmana is mainly in goodness. This doesn't mean that Brahmana never has any passion or doesn't have any ignorance. It doesn't mean like that. Because even when a Brahmana sleeps, he enters the mode of ignorance. Correct? A Brahmana, because sleep itself is in the mode of ignorance. You cannot say that a Brahmana sleeps in goodness. No, it doesn't work like that. So the certain modes are needed for certain kinds of activities. So you cannot run away from the modes. But predominantly they are in Sattva-guna. Rajoguna and Tamoguna are very small, and generally for more or less for the purposes that they are needed for certain kinds of activities in this. But a Kshatriya is a significant mixture of Rajoguna with Sattva-guna. They may have Tama, but the Tama constitution is much smaller. But Raja constitution is significant. And that is why, even though they are generally tending towards the positive, they have certain qualities of Rajo which give them certain values and qualities which are of the nature of material enjoyment. So what are those qualities? In verse 43, the Gita says, Shauryam tejo dhrutir dakshyam yuddhecha apalayanam danam ishvara sambhavascha shatram karma swabhavajam. What are the natural qualities by which a Kshatriya is guided? Heroism. They like to, Kshatriyas like to be a hero. That's why they will go out, you challenge a Kshatriya, he'll not back out. A true Kshatriya. They like to display their power. They are very determined by nature. And they are also very resourceful. Actually, both the Kshatriya and the Vaishya is resourceful. But Kshatriya is resourceful from an administrative perspective. A Vaishya is resourceful from a commercial perspective. So if you want to get some things done, you want to build something, create something, Kshatriya spirit, or even fight, or have a big agitation, have a big political movement, Kshatriya spirit is. So they are very resourceful. Also very courageous in battle. So of course, courage doesn't mean that they have no fear, but courage means that they are so brave that they are able to overcome fear and face it and still go ahead and perform the duty. At the same time, Kshatriyas are also supposed to be generous. They give a lot of danam. And leadership. So leadership is also a Kshatriya quality. So if there is a group of people who needs to be driven towards a particular goal, the ability to bring people together, the ability to guide and drive a group of people, that's also a quality of Kshatriyas. So these are the qualities that they live by. And if you analyze this, you will realize that some of these qualities are qualities, whether it is about heroism, power, they are also aspects of vigor and rajasic spirit of activity. But at the same time, it is also balanced with good qualities, sattvic qualities like giving dan, and a few other sattvic qualities as well, generosity, bravery, determination. Determination is also very wonderful uh, quality which is helpful. Determination to pursue the path they have selected, determination to act on the decisions that they have made. Then, in the next verse, Krishna summarizes the qualities which guide the Vaishyas and the Shudras. So, Vaishyas are said to be a mixture of Rajogun predominantly, mixed with a little bit of Tamogun, but predominantly Rajogun. So what are the qualities? Krishi, Goraksha, Vanijam, Vaishya, Karma, Swabhavajam. Krishi, agriculture. Goraksha, taking care of the cows. And Vanijam, trade. Vaishya, Karma, Swabhavajam. These are the natural activities of a Vaishya. So what does this mean? So these are typical occupations that a person of Vaishya nature is inclined. A Vaishya is not inclined to go for war. A Vaishya is not so much inclined to study scripture. What does Vaishya like to do? A Vaishya likes to produce economic value. And economic value can be produced in three ways. This is how the scripture indicates. Mainly three ways, three kinds of activities, three broad categories. Some form of agriculture, where one is either growing grains, vegetables, fruits of some sort, tilling the land in some way. That is Krishi. Goraksha. Goraksha is mainly cow protection, but in a broader sense, any kind of an animal husbandry where one is taking care of animals to get produce from them, particularly milk. And Vanijya. Vanijya means all kind of trade. So production of items, sale, trade, manufacture, all these are within the category of Vanijya. Vanijya basically means commerce. So buying, selling, trade, all these activities are natural to Vaishya. So Vaishya is always essentially driven by economic value. So what is the main question that comes to the mind? The main question which will come into the mind of a Vaishya when he is discussing about anything is, what is in it for me in terms of economic value? Somebody tells him, I am going to do this. Would you like to join me? Arey, profit kitna hoga? Kitna milega? How much will I get out of this? That's the first thing they think. They will not think, a Kshatriya will first think how it will affect my position, my honor, my this, that. Of course, Vaishya may also be attached to honor and all that, but that is not the top thing on his mind. For him, if he gets more money somewhere and less honor, it is okay for him. But Kshatriya, for him, honor, position is more important than money. Even though money is important for a Kshatriya, but for Kshatriya, honor is more important. Heroism and power, because heroism is also about identity. Heroism is also about respect and honor. So Vaishya is generally guided. That is why it is said that a Vaishya sometimes, because he's always attracted about money, he's always about making profit, he's always trying to see how he can squeeze maximum profit. And that is why they are very absorbed in Rajogun and sometimes even going into Tamogun. But predominantly Rajogun, because it's predominantly about commercial activity. Commercial activity means there must be lust and greed there. I want more. One shop, that shop does well. So now I want to have two shops. I want to have one more outlet. After two shops are successful, somebody says, oh, why don't you have two more shops in the suburb? Yes, I will expand. I will do more and more. Then one will create a franchise and do more and run around. Even though they have no time to eat and drink, but they'll still work hard and they will feel so satisfied that I'm just by seeing the money coming in, how much is flowing into the bank account, they'll be very happy. Knowledge, politics, all this in politics, as long as all that matters to me is how my tax laws are. As long as my business is not being affected, I'm not really bothered who's the king and what is happening outside. So I mean, and this is just the general mentality. I'm not saying each and every person is exactly thinking like this, because oftentimes there are so many mentalities which are there. But this is generally how a Vaishya is driven. So amongst the Vaishyas, those who are more into Krishi and Goraksha, they are not so passionate, because agriculture and taking care of the cows is something which is a bit more peaceful, even though it is about economic produce. It is not, of course, trade and business, which is Vanijya, is much more passionate. Of course, Lord Krishna himself in Vrindavan belongs to a Vaishya community, and that particular community of Nanda Maharaj and their followers is focused primarily on Goraksha, taking care of the cows. And the Vanijya in the context of Goraksha is selling milk, yogurt, butter, ghee, all these things. That is the kind of Vaishya living. And that is considered a very conducive lifestyle. Even though it is Rajoguna, even though there may not be so much Shastric study and other things, that living off the land and living by taking care of the cows is considered a very peaceful kind of life. Prabhupada would often encourage, say that devotees should live like that, have a land, have some place to grow vegetables and fruits, and nicely do their sadhana, spiritual study, preaching, worship the deities, and live happily. What does a person need to live a happy life? Some land, a cow. That's all. That's how that was the standard of wealth in Vedic times. And that is why even kings, when they would give donation to Brahmins, they would often give them some land, because Brahmanas would also, not that they were into agriculture with an intention to sell, but practically everybody would have some very basic gardens where they could practically have some vegetables, at least to cover their needs, if not cover, if not for selling. So this was very, very common. And have a cow at home so that one will take care of one's own needs, and if there is excess, they would exchange it with others. And in that way, they would have a happy life. And for the Shudras, Krishna says, Paricharya Atmakam Karma Shudrasyapi Swabhavajan. The essential nature of a Shudra are labor and service to others. Which means all kind of laborer kind of job, which means those jobs which are service oriented, which means you are rendering a service. You're not producing wealth, you're not doing farming, you're not doing commerce directly, nor are you a politician or a leader, but you're just providing a service, and in return for that service, you are getting remuneration from your master. This is the nature of Shudras. So by this definition, practically in Kali Yuga, the vast majority of people fall into the category of Shudra. Because what does Shudra mean? You perform service and you get a salary. Which means you're not directly producing value, but you are part of an organization where you are serving a master who is producing value, who may be a businessman. So typically, Vaishyas and Kshatriyas are served by the Shudras. And in return, they will get value. So practically all the people who work in corporates doing a job, including the CEO, if he is doing a job, is a Shudra. The owner of the business is a Vaishya. The investor is a Vaishya. But the executive is a Shudra. So of course, CEO is a glorified Shudra, and the laborer who's cleaning the toilets, the janitors, is also a Shudra, but he may not be so glamorous. But it is all within the range of Shudras only. Because Shudras are neither Brahmins, they are not knowledgeable, peaceful, nor are they rulers or warriors, Kshatriyas, nor are they directly producing economic value. They are producing value, but not in terms of a sellable product, but they are producing value through a labor of some kind of an exertion of either a physical exertion or a mental exertion. They are doing some work. So if somebody comes to somebody and performs a for them, that is considered Shudra labor. So that is practically most of the world today. And Shudras are generally driven by the modes of ignorance. There is of course some Rajogun in it also, but it is predominantly Tamagun. And typically, those who are in Tamagun aren't particularly concerned about, the Shudras are not particularly concerned about higher principles of life. Typically, they are not even concerned about following the principles of religion properly. Their main motivation is how I get my salary and I will serve my master. If this master cannot pay me, I will find another master. And from that another master, I will get a salary. So they are always dependent on their master in that sense. So this is how Krishna explains. These are the four Varnas. And Krishna then makes a very interesting point. He says, Arjuna, even though these four are so different and such a wide range of qualities, but please understand that every person, irrespective of whether it's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, can still achieve perfection by still working according to his qualities. Now, this we briefly discussed last time, the last class. Krishna is saying it doesn't mean that a Shudra cannot advance spiritually. A Vaishya or a Kshatriya cannot advance spiritually. Of course, the Brahmana is ideally suited for spiritual realization, but everybody can make progress from where they are. And how they progress? Krishna says, now I will explain to you how a person can make advancement even by following work based on his own qualities. And what is Krishna's answer? Krishna gives a very beautiful answer. Verse 46. Krishna says that if you perform your work as in such a way as a worship for me, if you perform work as a worship for me, who's the Supreme Lord of everything and who's all pervading, then a person can achieve perfection by performing his own work. So Krishna doesn't say work is worship. He doesn't say work is worship. He says work should be done as a worship for me. Some people forget God and just work like an ass just to earn money. That is not worship. Krishna says if you follow your duties and you do that duties as a worship of the Lord. Yatap parvritti bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam sarva karmanatam abhyacharya siddhim vindanti manavaha. How does a manav achieve siddhi? By tam abhyacharya swakarmana. By worshipping him. Tam means the Supreme Lord. Abhyacharya. By worshipping him. How? Swakarmana. By one's own activities. Now, what kind of activities is Krishna referring to? Each of these four, based on the qualities we discussed, they have certain activities, and those activities are very much based on these qualities. If one performs one's own duty according to one's own qualities, according to one's varna and ashram, according to one's social position, as well as the position one is in life, if one performs one's duties properly in the spirit of worship of the Lord, then one can attain perfection through the performance of his own work. Prabhupada explains that ultimately we have to understand that through all our work, Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam. So through the work as well as through the result of the work, the Lord should be worshipped. Both. Now, how through the work the Lord is worshipped? This was already discussed by Krishna earlier in the 3rd chapter. I do not remember the verse number, but essentially in that verse, Krishna says, just open the 3rd chapter and try to find that particular verse. But in that particular verse, Krishna says that Tasmat Sarvagatam Brahma Nityam Yadne Pratishtitam. That because Krishna explains a very beautiful cycle in the 3rd chapter where Krishna says, just if I can quickly. Anyway, I'll try to give you the verse later. But Krishna essentially says that yajna or sacrifice is the performance of one's prescribed duty. 3.15 Amit is saying. Can you read out the verse, Amit? I don't have the verse open in front of me.
Is it 3.15, Prabhuji?
Yeah, can you read out the verse?
Yeah.
Karma bodhaman vidhi brahmakshara samudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yadne pratishtatam.
Correct. Yeah. So karma brahmodbhavam vidhi. That karma comes from the supreme truth. And comes from the Vedas. Karma comes from the Vedas, and Vedas come from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is why the all-pervading transcendence permeates all the duties or activities or all the yajnas. So what Krishna is saying is that because the instructions of the Vedas that he has given are the duties according to the Varnashram system, and because they are mentioned in the Vedas and Vedas are coming from him, within the duties, his instruction is instilled, and that is why his power is there within the duties. His energy, his blessing is there. And that is why when a person performs those duties properly in the spirit of detachment and recognizing them to be instructions of the Supreme Lord, when one accepts and executes them, one actually performs yajna. So even simply performing one's prescribed duties according to Shastra, understanding those duties to be coming from the Supreme Lord itself is yajna. And that is why when one performs one's duties properly, gradually one makes spiritual elevation, because that activity is also execution of religion. It is also a type of worship. It is said the Lord is worshipped in this way. So there are two ways. One is that the Lord becomes worshipped when one performs one's prescribed duties. And one should also dedicate, one step above that, is to dedicate even the result of that activity for the service of the Lord. Some people only do the first part. It is also good, which is also purifying. But if you want rapid purification, performing karma is good. Good in the sense it is religious. But performing karma yoga is spiritual. And what is the difference between karma and karma yoga? The similarities, both are based on prescribed duties. But simply performing karma is performing some prescribed duty to enjoy the fruits. And karma yoga is performing the same prescribed duty in a detached way for the pleasure of the Lord, offering the fruits to the Lord. That will lead to spiritual elevation. So worship of the Lord through the performance of our activities. So the Lord is hinting at karma yoga. So again, Krishna is telling Arjuna, it is not that a Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra cannot make advancement, nor do they have to change their nature. They have to continue their activities, but they have to change their consciousness. The activities will remain the same because they cannot artificially change the nature of their activities because they are in a particular mode. If you ask a businessman who's continuously counting money and thinking about whom to sell what, I don't know if you have observed anybody who's a salesman at heart, who's a businessman at heart. Every conversation they go to, in a social setting, in a family gathering, in every conversation they're looking for a business opportunity only. How to sell, how to look for some opportunity. I personally am not a sales related, my mentality is not like that. So I become very uncomfortable with such an environment. Of course, nothing wrong with them. I mean, that is their nature. So they are doing like that. So Krishna is not even condemning that. It's just that is their nature. So they are comfortable with that. Others who have a different nature. A Kshatriya will enjoy talking about his, about power, position, ruling, administration, leadership. They like to talk at that level. A Brahmana will talk about truth, reality. They will enjoy deeper, more spiritual conversations. They will share wisdom. What will Shudra talk about? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. What is the food in the party? How much drink is there? Where we can dance? How much we can dance? That's all that they are bothered about. So Shudra is, because Shudra's mentality is generally have money. Why they want money? So that I can enjoy at a sensual level. That is a Shudra's mentality. They get money, they will spend it on their own enjoyment. They are not interested in higher, nor are they even so much bothered about so many other things. And that is why so those who are Shudra, it is very easy to influence them just by giving them some freebies. Because all they are interested is some immediate gratification. And that's what politicians take advantage of many times. When elections come, they'll give a bottle of liquor or distribute some free goodies here and there. And Shudra is not even thinking about the long term, because Shudra is just an immediate gratification mentality. They're not even thinking long term. So just take, okay, you do this, yeah, I'm just happy, you are happy, I'm happy, finished. They're not thinking that in the long run I'm getting cheated. So they're not even wise in that sense. just thinking about immediate gratification. Anyway, so the point here Krishna is trying to make is that one is not needed to change one's situation artificially. What is needed is to perform one's work, dutiful work, in a detached way, because within the dutiful work, because the dutiful work is the instruction of the Lord, there is spiritual power in the dutiful work. And when the dutiful work is done in a detached way for the sake of the Lord, it has a very strong power of elevating one to a higher state of consciousness. So when one links one activity to the Lord, then the karma doesn't remain karma, it becomes karma yoga. Because through the karma, one does yoga, which means one links oneself to the Supreme through one's own duty. Okay, I hope this concept is clear. This concept is very, very important. And that is what Krishna is hinting to Arjuna, that Arjuna, I want you to continue doing your duty as a Kshatriya. So don't try to artificially renounce everything and go to the forest and try to act like a Brahman. You cannot, because that is not your qualities. You do your duty, your swakarma of fighting, but don't do it for yourself. Do your dutiful work in a detached way and do it for me. When you do it for me, you will be free from all karma. You will not get entangled even when you kill. That is the beautiful thing. And then Krishna emphasizes to Arjuna, 47th verse, it says, Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushitat swabhavanyatam karma kurvan napnoti kilbisham. Sir, Arjuna, please understand that there is no need to copy another person's duty. Just because you think that person's duty is better than your duty. I'll read the translation. This is a very profound verse. Krishna says, it is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. And why? Krishna explains why it is like this. Because if one performs duties according to one's own qualities, which are prescribed by the Lord, such activities are never affected by sinful reactions. It's a very profound point. What does this mean? That even though from a very neutral perspective, it may seem a Brahmana's duties are better than a Shudra's duty, and that is true from a neutral perspective. But even then, for a Shudra, it is better to follow Shudra's duty rather than copy a Brahmana's duty. Because even though there may be fault in a Shudra's duty, for a person who is of the nature of a Shudra, there is no sin to follow a Shudra's duty. Because that is the level at which he is. Which means, in very simple words, if you are in first standard, if you do not know trigonometry, it is okay. I am not even expecting you to know trigonometry, Krishna said. Just do first standard sums. And according to that, even if there are mistakes which are considered mistakes in a higher class, for you it is not a mistake. I will not punish you for it. Which means, for a first standard student, if somebody says, what is 1 minus 2? The first standard student will say, no, you cannot do 1 minus 2. Because from 1 apple, you cannot take away 2 apples. 1 minus 2 is not possible. And teacher will say, very good. But a fifth standard person will say, Arey, this is the wrong answer. This is not the answer. The answer is 1 minus 2 is equal to minus 1. Right? Because I know there's a number line, there's a negative also, there's a positive also. So they have a higher knowledge. Because they have a higher knowledge, there's a higher expectation. And a Brahmana goes even to a deeper level of mathematical concepts. So based on one's level, one is expected to act. So even if there is a fault, even though a first standard student may say 1 minus 2 is not possible, and it may seem wrong to a Brahmana or a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, from a karmic perspective, because that person is in first standard, that answer is correct. There is no penalty for giving that answer. So dharma is not absolute in that sense. Dharma is relative to your position. So your duty is based on your current situation in the three modes. I'm talking about material duties. Spiritual duty is same to all of us. What is our spiritual duty? Everybody is supposed to worship the Supreme. Whether it's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, it doesn't matter. Everybody is supposed to worship him. Everybody is supposed to chant his name, hear about him, worship him. Both directly and through one's karma. That remains the same. But in terms of the duties, in terms of how one lives, one's occupation, one's day-to-day activities, one can live according to the modes. And one must seek guidance from the scriptures as to what is considered acceptable and what is not acceptable based on his situation in the modes. And if one acts according to that, one does not accumulate sin, even though the activity may not seem to be of the perfect standard. And that is why Prabhupada says a Shudra doesn't have to act like a Brahmana and doesn't have to artificially claim to be a Brahmana. Because only a person who's in the mode of goodness predominantly can act as a Brahmana. Similarly, a Kshatriya also should not artificially try to act like a Brahmana. Oh, you can slap me on one cheek and I will not retaliate. No, Kshatriya's duty is to retaliate. His duty is to protect himself and others. So Kshatriya has to perform his duties. He should not give up his duty. But everyone should perform their duties for satisfying the Supreme Lord. Samsiddhir Hari Toshanam. And if one does that, one will achieve perfection, no matter what the situation is. So we spoke last time also about a Vaishya. A Vaishya may be earning profit. Sometimes he may have to lie. No, sir, for you, I'm just giving you without profit. I'm giving you cost price. You're such a good friend. No profit. For you, no profit. In fact, I'm giving you 10 rupees less. Everybody knows he's lying. But that's how he sells. He may be making 100% profit, 200% profit. He may show he's reducing 10 rupees, but he's still making 100% profit. That is within the realm of sales, and so that is not considered a fault. But a Brahman doesn't act like that. If a Brahman does like that, it will be a fault. Because Brahman's duty is to always be truthful. So net, one should not act for one's sense enjoyment, but for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. And that is called yajna. And that is what we discussed in 3.15 also. What is yajna? Performance of one's duty for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord is known as yajna. And through yajna, one achieves happiness both in this world and the next. And what is the highest of all yajnas? Yajna naam japa yajñosmi. Of all yajnas, the highest yajna is chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And this yajna, because it is a spiritual yajna, it applies to all Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Because this is duty at the level of the soul, not duty at the level of the body. It is not Varnashram Dharma, it is Bhagavad Dharma, Sanatan. Krishna further explains the point that he just mentioned, and we'll just end in a few minutes, just another 3-4 minutes. Krishna says, Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham apinyatyaje sarvarambha hi doshena dhumen agnir ivavritaha. Krishna is explaining the same point by saying that karma which is born out of one's nature, sahajam, even though there is a fault, sadosham api, nyatyaje, don't give up. We just now discussed, right? There may be faults in a Vaishya's duty, there may be fault. Politics. Politics is full of so many faults, so many kinds of things you have to do in politics. When you are a king, so many things you have to do. There may be so many faults in it. Now, we are not talking here about outright cheating and, going against the principles of religion, but within that dharma also there are so many aspects that may not be considered absolutely ideal. Sometimes even a Brahman has to perform. Prabhupada says, sometimes in a yajna, also a Brahman may have to perform a sacrifice in which sometimes an animal may be killed. A Kshatriya is forced to do violence, which he cannot avoid. So all these things are necessary for that person who has that duty, and one cannot avoid. Sometimes a Shudra may have a bad master. One must serve him. He wants a salary and he needs to do that. So even though that is done, that is the situation, one may have to continue. So Krishna says one must continue to perform one's duty according to one's nature. And Krishna gives a very good example. He says, a fire is usually accompanied by a smoke. But just because there is some smoke along with the fire, one doesn't give up the fire. One tolerates the smoke and continues with the fire. Correct? When people cook, in olden times, there was not this LPG gas cylinder. There were always smoky chulas. And the smoke and the fire would always be accompanied with some smoke. Even when one is performing yajna, the fire is accompanied by smoke, and sometimes it burns the eyes, but we tolerate it. Because through the fire, good result is achieved. Either food is cooked or the yajna is performed. So because the output is so good, whatever little faults are there, we just tolerate in the smoke. Because if one gives up the fire altogether, there will be neither fire nor smoke. Yes, smoke will not be there, but there will be no fire. You will not be able to achieve the end result also. You will not be able to elevate yourself if you give up the duty. So in that spirit, even though there may be certain disturbing elements in one's duties, one must still use the fire, focus on the fire, and carry on with one's duty. And especially when one focuses one's duties on serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that smoke doesn't have any deteriorating effect on oneself. In the sense that those faults are not translated into sin as long as one performs one's own prescribed duty selflessly. One will continue to make rapid spiritual advancement if one takes to the process of Karma Yoga. So again, Krishna is emphasizing, don't try to switch duties. Don't try to look at another person's duty. See, the other thing is, when one tries to copy the duty of another person, then one actually becomes very frustrated in life. And we'll conclude with verse actually we can stop here. Can continue with verse 49 in the next class, because 49 to 55 is another section. But essentially at this point in time, Krishna has concluded this whole section about karma and being free from karma, and in a very beautiful way. And summarily what Krishna is saying is, everything is influenced by the three modes. Every individual is influenced by the three modes, and there are different duties based on the three modes. Society is also divided into three modes. So do not expect that anybody in this world is free from the three modes. Everybody is influenced by the modes. The way to transcend the modes is not by trying to copy another person's modes, but by acting according to the duties of the modes as given in scripture, but performing those activities in a detached spirit, and by devoting those activities as a service to the Supreme Personality of God. And that is why it is possible for all Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra to achieve perfection if they take to this world. And there is no need for a person to switch his role or to do something different. So Shudra doesn't have to think that, oh, I want to be a glamorous businessman. If it is actually his nature to be a glamorous, to be a businessman, and he has the true qualities of a Vaishya, of course he can become a Vaishya. Don't have an issue with that. But if you force a Vaishya to be a Kshatriya in battle, then what will happen? When he goes to the battle, he'll come back, running away. Because he doesn't actually have courage. Huh? He doesn't actually have valor. Because you don't have the quality, you cannot perform that activity. You will be a disaster. Just because you think that, this is a more attractive position. And that is what happened, even in the Vietnam War and even in many other places in the world. When soldiers are just drafted and forced to participate in battles, even though they are not having the qualities of a Kshatriya, it is nice to adorn the uniform, but when you go into a battle and you are faced with bullets and bombs, people run away from that situation because they don't have that spirit of fighting. Krishna says, no need to switch. No need to act like you are something else. Just be yourself. Understand under the guidance of a spiritual master what are your duties. Then perform them gently. Most important thing, worship the Lord directly as well as through your work. And also offer the results of your activities. Okay. I'm opening up the floor. Any questions or comments? Yes, Kalyani, nice to see you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I had two questions actually.
Yeah.
One was that how do you know what your duties are? Is it something that is determined by the family you're born in and what your environment tells you, or is it something that you feel from inside, like a calling or whatever? And my second question was, so if, for example, someone who is a Brahmin wants to get into business, start a business, is that wrong? And if not, then how to avoid getting into a bad karma cycle? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Krishna has explained in the previous chapters that Chatur Varnam Maya Surshtam Guna Karma Vibhakashaha, that the system of the four Varnas is not created based on birth. It is created based on the qualities and activities, qualities and consequent activities that one is naturally inclined towards. So what that means is, your Varna is based on your psychophysical nature, the individual psychophysical nature, and not necessarily based on what we call today, I am born in Brahman family, I am born in Kshatriya family, I am born. Even though in one sense, one's family environment, one's genetics also influences one's predisposition and nature. Yeah, does, right, typically. And one's upbringing also does. But the scriptures say that that is not binding. What that means is, just because somebody happens to be born to a truly Brahmanical parents doesn't necessarily mean that that every child is necessarily a Brahman. And this is true for any Varna. In fact, in today's time, this whole system of Varnashram is so distorted and so unrepresentative of our true qualities. In today's Kali Yuga, practically it's very, very difficult to find a person who's truly showing a Brahmanical character. So very, very, very small percentage. So even amongst the millions who are born in Brahmana families, we don't label them as Brahmanas according to this definition. Because if we want to examine, if we actually examine the qualities by which, right? So for us, like what we say, right? What is the value? What is it that you're valuing? If you're actual Brahman, you will always value wisdom, knowledge, service, selflessness, control, all these spiritual values above all material attainments. If that is not how you're leading your life, how can that person be a Brahman? Doesn't matter where he's born, right? And if those are not his qualities, then he's not a Brahman, then he's not suitable for duties of a Brahman. Because if you don't have those qualities, you cannot have those duties. So for us, let's not, in our current situation, Kali Yuga, let's not be too concerned about which family background we come from. Let us try to understand more deeply. Of course, the family and impressions do contribute to one's nature. So in that sense, there may be a contribution, but the more important question is, we have to see for ourselves, examine ourselves, and perhaps in discussion with those who can help us identify what are the values. So values, passions, mindsets, all these are aspects of one's psychophysical, constitution. So that will actually determine what are the qualities. So that is why if a person follows his psychophysical nature, that is what matters, not so much which family he's born in. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. So what we generally say is, see, there are two aspects to duties. So I mentioned also that there is Varnashram duty and there is Bhagavad duty or Sanatan Dharma duty. So the principle here is, we discussed about the four categories, right? The four Varnas. The point is, we should see what out of these four broad categories we, based on our own nature, what we enjoy doing. And actually, you see in today's time, so many people much later in their life and career say, I don't enjoy what I do, right? So this doesn't, I did it for the money, I did it because I was supposed to, like in India, practically 20, 30 years ago, everybody was supposed to be either a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. Okay, so, but if you are inclined to be an artist, if you are inclined just to provide, service or do some other, how do you fit into it? So there are so many people who go into so many education, who acquire so many educational qualifications, but from a psychophysical nature, they are not aligned with that kind of work. They don't become happy in their life. They can still pass exam, because one may still be academically intelligent enough to understand a topic and pass an exam. But work and finding satisfaction in that work and finding alignment with a particular type of work will not happen unless that work is aligned with one's nature. And that is why many people later in life, if they have the means, they prefer to align themselves with something which is more resonant with what is their true values, right? And this happens because one is not following one's dharma. It's as simple as that. If one is not finding resonance in what one is doing, it simply means one is not following one's dharma. As simple as that. I'm assuming they're not doing sinful work. I'm talking in that context.
Yes.
They're not happy in what they're doing. So that is because they're, and that is why Krishna says that if a person follows another person's duty, even though, for example, a person who doesn't have the nature of a doctor but is very technically skilled and knowledgeable, can maybe even still able to perform a doctor's duty properly in terms of the external execution of the duty, because he is intelligent enough, he knows the knowledge, he is able to diagnose, but still he'll not be satisfied because it's not his nature to act in that particular way. Yeah. So that is why many people become successful in certain professions but still are frustrated. Right. And that is why that resonance of one's occupation with one's nature is very important. So that's one aspect of life. And the other aspect is resonance at a spiritual level. So resonance at a spiritual level is alignment of the soul with the Supreme Lord. And that is about accepting the path of devotion, which is common for every soul. So whether one is a Kshatriya, Brahmana, Vaishya or Shudra, one still worships the Lord. Of course, a Brahmana may be more trained to do elaborate worship through rituals and ceremonies and other things, which others may not be trained, but that's okay. Others may take help, but the principle of worship, the principle of surrender to Lord, the principle of devotion to the Lord, the principle of offering to the Lord is still common. So in today's time, we have to focus on following that nature of the soul, which is to connect to the Lord. And that is also the nature of service. It is service to the Lord and service to all living entities in connection to the Lord. And the second aspect of dharma is finding our nature and what service we can do within that nature in terms of our occupation or profession. So if we do both these things, we can have a more holistic, satisfied life. Yeah. So that's how we can determine our duties. Yeah, I hope
Thank
that
you.
was useful. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so is everyone okay with the Friday discussion on Narsingh Chaturdashi? Is that okay, or do you also want another one on Saturday?
Yes, Prabhuji. We want Friday and Saturday.
Prabhu wants both Friday and Saturday. Prabhu is very enthusiastic to be there. So how many of you are okay with Friday?
I'm okay, Prabhu, Friday.
Yeah,
Okay.
even I'm okay, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. So about the Saturday, I will announce a little later whether I want to do the Saturday one based on some other things also. But Friday, I will publish the Zoom link. So if you can join for Friday, I don't have the link yet, but when I get the link, I will share that with you. I think Friday is around 7:30, if I'm not wrong, 7 or 7:30 Malaysia time. So it is slightly earlier. So in India, it will be around 4:30 to 5 in that range starting. Okay, so thank you very much. Have a good evening, and I will see you on Friday at the earliest. Thank you. Mantra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Thank you,
Hare
everyone. Hari Bol.
Thank you.